while I was there, let me tell you a little bit how I got there. I don't know, some of you may have read my book already. I just wanted to, I knew Cliven from years before, and we had already been through a battle out in Utah, the same thing. Federal government trying to take over the land. Actually, after the book was finished, I realized that the agent in charge, and after I'd written the book, I realized that I got the information, the agent in charge that had carried out the attack in Nevada was the same one who had tried to have me arrested for a rally that we had on a closed road going up to Paria Canyon a few years before. I didn't know he was the same one. And I did go to my sheriff because I got word that I was going to be arrested. This was on Thursday. We were riding Saturday morning. So I went to my sheriff and I said, and who's going to arrest me? Nobody. I said, does that mean you're going to be there? Yes. I said, so why were they going to arrest me? And he said, to make an example. I want to bring this up a little bit because there were a lot of videos that I couldn't put all the pictures. There was lots of pictures. You know that everybody learns best. When you have a lot of children, you understand that everybody learns really well by pictures. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, I wanted to make a picture book with lots of pictures and colors, but they edited it, put black and white and small pictures. They said it was too costly. But I do want to show you some of the pictures and a little bit of the videos. You have to remember that I was there during the whole time. I actually just a second, I'll get this up. Okay. You may have seen quite a few of these already. I'm going to bring up a video if it will play here. I had gone to get some information. First of all, I want to show you what a Fourth Amendment corral looks like. Or First Amendment, excuse me. This is the First Amendment corral set up at the beginning, going into Bunkerville. And there was another one set up at the interchange as you're coming across over to the Bundy Ranch. That's how big they were. And we were allowed to protest, standing in behind this orange fence at either location, but we could only occupy one at a time. Of course, there were very few people who took them up on that offer until they called the governor, and he apologized. 3 days later, they did take it down. Now, some people wanted to know about this flag. On one side, we have the American flag at the top. And the opposite side, he wanted to portray, because who has the most power? The federal government or we the people? And that was why he put that up, so that people understand that it is we the people who have the power that we give to the federal government. I went there. This is a really awesome interview with Dave Bundy. I hope that you can pull that up on the internet, because when I put it on YouTube, it was really, really touching, but it takes a little long to play, and I don't have time today. But I would like you to hear the interview that I did with Cliven Bundy, which has not been played. And hopefully you can hear this.
Before us here is Cliven Bundy does not pay his grazing fees, and so that seems to be unfair to our other ranchers and to our government, that he's using a renewable resource out here that's not being paid for. So I'm going to try to attempt to answer that question. First, if I did pay my grazing fees, and even if I did pay it to the United States government, do you think that we the people would actually get any good or have any, would you get any part of that dollar that I paid? That seems to be, you know good and well, the bureaus would eat this up and you would never see it. It would be done through, paid up through administrative expenses. So let's just leave it at that. Now let's talk about who should Clive Bundy pay his grazing fees to. I say that the United States does not own land in the state of Nevada. They do not hold title to the land in the state of Nevada, and they're not the landlords of the state of the land in the state of Nevada. So I'd say I would be happy to pay my grazing fees, if I owed grazing fees, to the proper government, which I would say the proper government would have to be Clark County, Nevada. And so the closest government to me and the government over the land within the borders of Clark County would have to be Clark County government. So if I was to owe any kind of fees, it would have to be to Clark County. Now let's talk about contracts. If I signed a grazing lease or a grazing permit from the BLM, United States government, I would be signing a contract between me and the United States. That contract would be valid under the Constitution of the United States. It would obligate me to pay the United States for what? Services. Isn't that what BLM is? Is a land manager. BLM contract with them, and I'm paying them. Then that's a valid contract. That's about as good a contract as you can get. That contract, because it's between me and the United States, would go to a federal court, and a federal judge would be able to rule on if either side of us broke that contract somehow. So that's a good contract. That's a constitutional contract, would have to be dealt with in a federal court.
Are we there? Sorry. I'm going to stop there because that kind of answered the question. I didn't understand. Because people would call and they say, well, he owes these fees and he didn't pay and he didn't. And it went actually from a few hundred to 1 million to 10 million. I mean, overnight, within days. It just kept expanding, exploding. And I say, boy, that's inflation. How fast can you go from a few hundred to millions and millions of dollars in 4 days? And during that period of time, right in the middle between these two, part of that interview, we had been interrupted and had to rush down to the river to protect the boys that were being surrounded by the BLM, and they were being harassed. And then we had a lot of public show up. Like I said, I would really like to be able to show all the videos. We really don't have much time. But let me go to the day of. So as I began to get all these phone calls from everybody around the country, that's when we went down to the river. As I went, Pat just spent all this time putting this on a slideshow for me, and then we can't find it. It just got lost. Those were the BLM that were huddled around like a bunch of bees, is what it reminded me of. And they just swarmed, and then they go out and hide in the dirt behind this hill, and they wait for somebody else to step off the road, and then they just attack them. It was really crazy. So in the state of Nevada and Utah and California, we have to pay attention to how much land that the government says that they actually own. Now, as we've come to this great big problem, my understanding now is that we have, who believes that the federal government can own property. And what kind of property? Because the Constitution tells us exactly what kind of property we can have. Can you answer that? Correct. That's Article 1, Section 8. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States, etc. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 miles square, as may by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings, and to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. Now, there seems to be a little confusion as to what is the 10-mile square? Washington, D.C., which they did purchase, right? Article 4 states, new states may be admitted by the Congress into this union, but no new state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state, nor any state be formed by the junction of two or more states or parts of states without the consent of the legislatures of the states concerned as well as of the Congress. The Congress shall have power to dispose of, now this is the key word, dispose of, and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. And nothing in this Constitution shall be so construed as to prejudice any claims of the United States or of any particular state. Section 4, the United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. My question is, dispose of. When? In my book, I talk about the problem with everybody on the right or everybody on the left. The left seem to stay together. The people on the right, we have this little problem of everybody has a great idea, and we should do it this way and this way and this way, and then they fraction, and we can't seem to get everybody on the right page. At this point right now, we have a real problem because if we can, in fact, get everybody together, we can move forward quickly. We will be able to mend this problem. So the question becomes of dispose of. At what point in time does the federal government dispose of the land of a territory that becomes a state? Now, my proposal is, and this is the same as Cliven, at the moment that you became a state, you have drawn borders. Okay, and inside those borders, when they have a state enabling act and it becomes a state, how can the federal government retain the lands inside the state as federal lands and make it a state? So we are declaring that at the point of statehood, at the moment of inception of statehood, that land has been disposed of by the federal government because now it becomes a state. How can you have a state with a few little cities in it and all this land going nowhere? It actually, we believe that it goes to the state that is disposed of at that proper time. This is where we have a glitch, and they think the federal government has been retaining those lands as territory, and that's the basis of which they stated that they had the right to throw people to the ground, that they had to throw them in jail, that they could tase them because they stepped off of a piece of road, blacktop, that was on territory that which they think they own. So if they were, if it was a territory, they have all the governing authority and protection of is to the federal government. But as you look in the Constitution, it says you have a state. So there's the big problem. When did that become disposed of? We are in the process of rectifying this problem. I'm hoping you will see the answer shortly. I have a meeting set up with some very important people with the Bundys, and we will try to fix that problem. Because at that point is when your sheriff has the right to defend you, which he should. Now, we have, at this time, I don't know how many of you have already read my book. Have you, any of you read the book? Okay, let me tell you real quick why I wrote the book. One of them was because, I'm getting a little deep here today because I'm hoping to move forward of the things that are going to occur from here. I wrote the book because I knew, actually I didn't know, the Lord told me I had to write the book. He said, because there were so many spiritual things that happened during this period of time. I mean, day after day, there were so many spiritual things. And I ended up in the house the very first day because I was friends of Clive, and he had called me a few days earlier, actually a few weeks earlier, 2 years to the day almost, he had called me for support because he had been warned that they were coming. We were able at that point in time to get a hold of a lot of legislatures from both states. I was screaming through the night because I didn't get the information until 7 o'clock the evening of Tuesday, and they were going to have this standoff at 6 o'clock the next morning. So we were able to postpone the fight for 2 years. Now, we didn't know they were coming back in 2 years. But when he got word of what was coming down, he called me again. When I got out to the ranch, I said, Cliven, do you know that all the ranchers that I had in 1995 when we were fighting on the Escalation National Monument, all those cowboys are now, we don't have so many. Some of them died. Some of them are in wheelchairs, some on oxygen. I said, let me come and see what we can do. I was getting a little bit worried. As I realized what he said about the contracts, I was sitting at the kitchen table because when I went into the house that first day after taking these videos, I heard that the telephone began to ring. They only have one phone. And the phone was ringing off the hook. And these kids and neighbors and whoever was answering the phone. And they would get so irate because there was, you know how people are, they make phone calls, they make threats, they start screaming and yelling on the phone, and pretty soon the kids are screaming and yelling, and then they're slamming the phone down. And I went, oh my, we got to have a little PR. I'll take over the phone. That was it. I was there for 2 solid months. I turned the kitchen table into the desk. We organized the family. We got everything put together so that we had communication with the family, and we had family prayer every morning. We had family meetings. We had prayers at night. And Cliven is truly a patriarch of his family. Here's what I'd ask you. How many people do you know, I don't care how big your family is, can get your sons on the same page and fight and support you and give all they've got in your defense and for the right? Do you know anybody who can gather their family together strong enough? You probably can right there. I can see because you're here learning, and I'm excited that you're here. It is very difficult to get people on the same page today, even families, because we're so scattered. And we have our own agendas, our own minds that we're beginning to get so indoctrinated with so many off-the-wall things. But felt the Spirit of the Lord in that home constantly. I felt the spirit of protection. When we were in the home, we knew that we were being protected. It was amazing as the world was in chaos just outside the gates of the house. And people began to show up. And they came from all over the country. Because you know why? Every one of them I asked, I'd say, why did you come? They had a feeling. They knew they had to come. They were so moved by the Spirit to come and help this family. At one point, you probably saw this on the news because since I had dealt with the media quite a bit earlier in the years, I kind of knew their MO. So we were truly being blessed. I knew the things not to say and things to watch out for because of the twisting of your words. And as I began to, I'd actually gone to St. George. Cliven's cousin had died. She happened to be one of my mother's best friends in high school. I didn't know Cliven. I just know some of his cousins. So Ryan and I had gone to the funeral, and we got a phone call. Guess what? Suddenly, Cliven was a racist. A racist. He is as far from a racist as anybody I ever met. But I had been there when he had said some things about Latinos and blacks being persecuted just like we were being also persecuted. And I knew the media had spun it out. I was furious. Anyway, it became so bad that all the media just fled like cockroaches. It was unreal because the day before that, he was the new American hero. Because on April the 12th, 2014, I want you to always remember that date. April the 12th, 2014, was the day that Cliven Bundy stood up against the federal government. What he did, what stand he took, was as important as the Boston Tea Party. Everybody in the country wasn't there, but I tell you what, it was historic. And the things that he did, he never carried a gun. He never went on the property he wasn't supposed to. He never stepped off the road. He didn't do any of those things that he wasn't supposed to because they were trying to, they were trying to get him to do something so that they could attack him. But he didn't. He never screamed and yelled. He was always soft-spoken, but matter of fact. He spoke so much on the interviews because he wanted to give everybody a chance that he actually went hoarse after the first 3 days. He couldn't even speak. And so when you hear him on the speech that day, he was pretty hoarse. I had to give him time that he could even go to the break time to go to the temple because he needed the Lord's help. And then for them to call him a racist was very unnerving. And it became a black cloud. Everybody fled, and he became, it was kind of like this blackness just settled over, and I was so distraught because I was sleeping on their couch, and I would stay up nights with him till 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and we would talk. And then the next morning we'd get up because we're both early risers. And so about 5 o'clock, we'd talk again before things started. And we had just finished, and the family came in, and they were going to have breakfast. We tried to have breakfast about 6 o'clock. And it was gloomy that morning. All I knew is that we were in really sad shape. And I knelt down by the side of the couch, and I prayed with all my heart. Lord, please take away. What is going on? How do we save the nation if they run away at the first sign of some crazy thing as racism? It was about 8 o'clock in the morning. We were in the kitchen. Everybody was talking and eating. And we got this, there came a knock at the door, and everybody was so busy, I went to the door. And as I got to the door, there was this little short lady with long black hair, and she was just bebopping around. And now nobody was doing that. Everybody was in a state of depression. And I said, what can I do to help you? And she said, we're the singers, and look up. We've come to sing for you. Well, we were already in trouble because we didn't have anybody to sing that night, because the weekend before, we had everybody across the nation wanted to be to the Bundys to sing on our celebration after the 12th. Okay, it was phenomenal. Famous singers came to our big celebration. We even had the guy who plays Washington show up. But at this point, we were in deep trouble. They came in, and I said, who's we? And she said, me and my 10 children. We drove in from Kansas. I said, okay, well, come in the yard. You stand right here by the tree. I'll go get the Bundys. So I went in and got them, and then they came out. And I want you to hear what we heard.
And we did bring a homeless man on our way here, by the way.
As soon as possible.
We picked
And then
him up
at a
and
quarter
he's
to
here.
12.
They brought a homeless man with them.
Okay, that's where I'm at.
Okay. I'm going to get with you. I've got you on that little list, and I'll tell you what I can.
Sorry, I'm not a really good photographer, but let me tell you, this was great.
The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat of my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though an host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. The war should rise against me, and this will I be confident. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Of whom shall I be afraid? The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Of whom shall I be afraid? Of whom shall I be afraid? Of whom shall I be afraid?
Amazing.
And we did bring a homeless man on our way.
Anyway, our hearts were touched. We wept because the Lord is now back. She told me that they were listening to the news the night before. They'd heard about the Bundy family. They have no money. They live on $2,000 a month. And they had the most dilapidated van you ever saw. And she said to her children, the Lord told me that we need to go to Nevada and help this Bundy family. She said there is no way we can do it. Early in the morning, and the kids were at eating breakfast, and she homeschools, and she said, we have to go. The kids got so excited We have to go, we have to go. They grabbed their blankets. They jumped in the van in their clothes. And they brought their musical instruments. And they traveled across this nation, sleeping on the ground whenever they get so tired they can't drive anymore. They'd throw their blankets in the dirt. They'd sleep and they'd get up and they'd go again. Their car breaks down in Wolf Creek Pass, Nevada, Colorado. And they are invited, because they were singing, they were invited to stay in a hotel. The first and only night they had a motel room, and they all slept. Somebody had given them $40, they bought chicken, the best night of their whole trip. But they knew they had to come. So many wonderful stories are like that, because they knew, they felt the Spirit of the Lord, and they knew. And I knew that I had to write the book, because nobody knew these special spiritual experiences, and the Lord kept saying, you have to write the book. After everything that took place, because I can't go through all of them, I literally have 7 businesses, and I fell from a roof. I was fixing a roof. And 2 days before this, I realized that I had to write the book, because I went to the editor, and I thought he was writing the book, and he said, he just handed me an outline. Holy moly, how am I going to have time to write a book? I had time, 90 days, flat on the couch, 10 miles out of town. I have no cell service, and I was laid up. And nobody calls me at home, because nobody knows my home phone. I'm always on my cell. So I had 90 days to write a book. And it was because the message in this book was to let you know how important it was that the Lord was there, that He's blessing this, that He is behind this. I know that for a fact. When I came back to the year reunion, I have to, oh, I'm not finding that. Okay, I'm going to have to take it off here. When I came back a year later, there's still more people that had absolutely been inspired. Ooh, where are we? Oh, here we go. I'm going to show you this. This guy was phenomenal. I want you to hear it just because I know I'm out of time. But this was a year later, and this is another inspiration.
Where's the big, is this good?
Right there, perfect.
I told you I'm not good at video, and the wind blows out there.
In 2014, I took a little trip along with Clive and Bundy to the Bunkerville Bridge. Mothers and fathers, old folks were there. Patriots and cowboys, there was freedom in the air. Since Sheriff Gillespie headed for the hill, 200 federales can do what they will. At Waco and Ruby Ridge and now Bunkerville, if the sheriff won't protect you, then we the people will. 100,000 thousands more armed bureaucrats are waging a war against our families, God and country, in your state, in my state, in the whole country. Well, they attacked Cliven's family, and the threat was real. They had attack dogs, stun guns, and snipers on the hill. They killed families at Waco and Ruby Ridge, too. And if you give them trouble, Cliven, they'll kill your family, too. But freedom fighters from across the land brought the guns and their ammo, and they were going to take a stand against tyrants and murderers and rustlers and thieves and jackbooted bureaucratic employees. 100,000 thousands more armed bureaucrats are waging a war against our families, God and country, in your state, my state, and the whole country. Well, Cliven said, you've got 1 hour now, lay down your guns and release our cows. The hour came and went, and the cowboys were in place. We called upon God, and we marched to the gate. Well, we'll all agree not to fire the first shot, but if they did, they'd soon be talking to God. Our dead-eye resolve was plain to see, and they said, give us 30 minutes, and we'll pack up and leave. 100,000 thousands more armed bureaucrats are waging a war against our families, God and country, in your state, in my state, in the whole country. Now, counties and states, it's time to arise to save the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And county sheriffs, they are the key to keep we the people safe and free. Now the feds back down, but they'll want you to pay. There'll be a sneaking and a creeping and a heading your way. The power's in the people, and they learned that lesson well when they faced the people at the Battle of Bunkerville. 100,000, thousands more armed bureaucrats are waging a war against our families, God and countries in your state, in my state, and the whole country.
Was he amazing? I want you to know that the Lord is on our side. We are going to win. I know that. We have hell to go through before that. And I think about the Star Spangled Banner a lot because it talks about the rockets were, sorry. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, or the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave? Oh, thus be it ever when free men shall stand between their loved home and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must when our cause it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. I just have one last thing to say. I appreciate these summits. I appreciate all of us as we work together to save the Constitution. I know that if you will listen to the Spirit, He will prompt you in the things that you need to be doing to preserve our Constitution. I'm grateful for this country. I'm grateful for the freedoms that we still have. And together, we will stand and save our families. But we can't do it without the Lord. And I'm just a everyday housewife, business owner, mother, grandmother of 41. We did go on a camp trip the other night. And Cliven has a lot of children too. And that's where they are on a family reunion. And the thing I want you to understand, this is the other thing that we are doing. We have just recently happened, and it's going to happen more. You'll probably hear more of it. Is we got a bunch of ranchers together because they're trying to push them off the land also in Utah and Arizona. If we stand, and they tried to talk us out of this, but if we stand and they cancel their permits with the BLM, you know that the war is coming on. But our job is to support them, just like Phil Lyman. If he would take the gates to those fences, to those roads that they have closed, and take them to, like the post office, to federal land, and throw them down and say, the road is open, then the sheriff, his sheriff, and all the people would back him up. Would you be there? That's where we need to be. When these ranchers say, we are standing on natural law, that's where we stand. We don't care about all your political. We're standing on natural law. Let me explain natural law to you really quick. And it's really good for you kids because let me explain what natural law is. Let's say we're standing in line at the movie theater. I'm standing here and I'm the fifth one back. And somebody comes in and tries to cut in line. What am I going to do? I say, oh, sorry, you got to go to the back of the line because I was here first. Well, how many people, if he keeps trying to butt in, is going to jump to my defense? Probably everybody behind me, right? Because they're saying, this is, and so you're defending your spot. Natural law is 3 steps. You were there first. You claim that spot and you use it. And the third part is you defend it. That's what natural law is. And our basis of the Constitution is based on natural law. The people that were here first, the people that were using that land, and the people that defend it. If we do not defend our right, say we let them in and we take a step back, we've lost that right. We can't afford to lose it. We have to stand for those inalienable rights that our God gave us, which was natural law. We have to do that, or we're going to lose this country. I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Is she awesome? I just wanted to explain one thing, and maybe two, because the way they got everybody on their side was to say that Cliven wouldn't pay his $1 million taxes, right? Everybody hated that. I have to pay my taxes. You stupid thing. Oh, anyway, I have to pay my taxes. Why doesn't Cliven? What down just a little bit, just real quick.
Cliven didn't owe any taxes. The thing was, remember what he said about the contract? And took me a little while to put this together. And in the evening one night, all of a sudden, and it didn't come from him, but all these people who kept calling in, and all of a sudden the light bulb went on. Cliven owned his family owned that property since in the 1800s. In 1913, well, actually in 1930, excuse me, it's when the BLM came in. And they made contracts to help manage the land. At that point, he was paying a contract with the BLM to manage his property. In 1993, what happened is we had these crazy things called Endangered Species Acts, and they began to say, oh, you've got all these turtles on the land, and and every place all over the country. And because you are killing all these turtles, we have got to decrease your cattle herds. Now, this is absolutely not true. It's proved later that turtles really thrive on cow poop and sheep poop. They thrive. And there were so many of them, and a cow has cloven hoofs. Do you think they like to walk on rocks? It's terrible. They won't even step on them.
You gotta have the short answer.
Okay, sorry. So what happened is Cliven said, I'm not going to pay you anymore to manage me out of my ranch, because we can't live on 150 head of cows. He didn't sign the contract in 1993. The other ranchers did. He did he felt guilty the next year because he didn't know who to pay him to, and all the other ranchers were paying. So he took his check and he took it to the county clerk, and she kept the check for $6,000. The next time he tried to pay him, they wouldn't accept the money, and they tried to send him back the other money, and they wrote him a check. He never cashed it. They still have his $6,000. But that next year, in '94, the state legislature decided that there was no more grazing, that this was a non-grazing area. He couldn't have a non-grazing area, so therefore he couldn't pay any taxes because they never billed him. So he never had any billing in '94, any time from then on. And he said to them, Taylor Grazing Act, you go back to the Taylor Grazing Act in 1930, which states if you have cattle and you want to put it on another piece of, if somebody builds around you, the law is you can only take, the cows can't go out, if they go off the, sorry, let me finish. If they step out of the fence, you have to fence them out, is how it goes. If you buy a property next to them, you have to fence them out. If they go across that fence, you can get them for trespassing. Federal government would not fence his property, so therefore there was no trespass, and he kept on grazing because they didn't fence him out. Anyway.